you ever held someone you loved as they took their last breath? If you have, you know there's a moment when time stops, when the world holds still, when everything you thought mattered suddenly means nothing compared to the person slipping away in your arms. This is what Bambolina learned on a rain-soaked night in Seoul. The rain fell hard that night, turning the narrow alley into a river of shadows and neon reflections. Dae-hyun stumbled through it, one hand pressed against his side where warmth pulsed between his fingers. His white shirt clung to his skin, no longer white. Each step sent water splashing, crimson mixing with the puddles beneath his feet. He'd been running 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time had stopped making sense after the gunshot, after the moment metal tore through flesh, and he realized this was real. This was happening. This was how it would end. Should have been smarter, he thought through the fog of pain. Should have seen it coming. But trust blinds you. Right up until the knife slides between your ribs. His legs gave out. The pavement rushed up to meet him, hard and cold. He tried to catch himself, managed to turn so he hit his shoulder instead of his face. Small mercies in a night without them. Dae-hyun! Bambolina's voice cut through the rain like a prayer and a curse combined. She'd been waiting for him at her apartment just 2 blocks away, had heard something that sounded like trouble, had run toward danger instead of away from it because that's who she was. Now she reached him, her knees hitting wet concrete as she pulled him into her lap. Her hands fluttered over his wound, pressing, trying to stop bleeding that wouldn't stop. No, this isn't happening. The words tumbled from her lips. Stay with me, please. You have to stay. He wanted to. God, how he wanted to. You still owe me an answer, she said, and tears mixed with rain on her face. You promised you'd tell me something important tomorrow. You can't die until tomorrow. Dae-hyun, look at me. He forced his eyes open. Her face swam above him, beautiful, even twisted with anguish. Rain ran down her cheeks like the tears he could taste when they fell on his lips. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice fading. Bamba, I was going to say, but the words wouldn't come. Or maybe they did, and he just couldn't hear them anymore. His hand lifted, so heavy now. When had everything gotten so heavy? And touched her cheek. Warm. Alive. Everything he was about to stop being. The most important thing. Each word cost him everything he had left. Is that you be happy, even without me. Promise me. I won't be without you. We're getting help. You're not leaving. Promise. He needed to hear it. One mercy before the dark. I promise, she sobbed. But Dae-hyun? He smiled. At least he thought he smiled. His face had gone numb. The confession he'd rehearsed 1,000 times since college, since the day she'd fallen asleep on his shoulder in the library, and he'd realized he'd protect her forever if she'd let him. You. Did he say it out loud, or just think it? He'd never know. His hand slipped from her face. His chest rose one more time, then stopped. His eyes, those gentle eyes that had looked at her with such careful devotion, went empty. No. Bambolina's voice shattered. No, Dae-hyun. No. Come back. I love you too. Please come back. But the dead don't return. Not in this world. Not in rain-soaked alleys where love arrives one breath too late. 20 meters back, half hidden in darkness, Dae-sung stood frozen. His brother had texted him an hour ago. If I don't come home tonight, read the letter in my desk. Take care of yourself. Take care of her. The message had sent ice through Dae-sung's veins. He'd followed his brother to the warehouse district, had watched from a distance, had seen him stumble out bleeding, had tracked him here. Now he watched Bambolina hold his brother's body and scream grief into the uncaring night. His hands clenched into fists so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. His jaw locked. His breathing came shallow and controlled because if he let it go, if he let the rage out, he'd never contain it again. Something was dying inside him too. Something soft and trusting. Something that believed good people were rewarded and justice existed and brothers came home safe. "Who did this to you?" he whispered through clenched teeth. No answer came. Only rain and approaching sirens and Bambolina's sobs cutting through it all. Dae-sung took one step forward, then stopped. If he went to them now, he'd break. He'd be useless. So instead, he turned, walked away into darkness. Let the cold settle into his bones and freeze the grief before it could paralyze him. A gentle soul had died in that alley. What walked away wasn't gentle anymore. 7 days earlier, Seoul in early spring carried hope in the air. Cherry blossoms preparing to bloom, days growing longer, winter's grip finally loosening. Bambolina stood outside the Kim family's corporate tower, clutching a folder that represented 3 years of her life. Accounting certification, financial forensics training, letters of recommendation that had required begging from professors who barely remembered her name. She'd left Korea 7 months ago with a broken heart and half-finished dreams. She'd promised herself she wouldn't return until she'd become someone who didn't need anyone's approval. Yet here she was. Because her visa was expiring and her student loans were crushing, and this was the best offer she'd received. Because sometimes survival trumps pride. Just a job, she told herself. You can handle seeing him again. You're a professional now. The lobby gleamed with marble and muted elegance, the kind of space designed to remind visitors exactly how small they were. She gave her name at reception, received a visitor badge, and took the elevator to the 6th floor. The doors opened onto the finance department. Glass offices lined both sides of a central corridor. At the far end, backlit by morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, stood a figure she'd spent months trying to forget. Dae-hyun. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and time did what it always did around him. Stuttered, folded, refused to move forward in any sensible way. Bambolina. Her name in his voice carried warmth she hadn't expected. He crossed the distance between them with easy confidence, that way of moving through space like he belonged wherever he chose to stand. You came back. She forced herself to breathe normally. I needed the job. Seoul needed you more. His smile was slow, genuine, devastating. It's been colder without you. Don't, she warned her traitorous heart, don't do this again. But her pulse quickened anyway, ignoring all sense and self-preservation. How is America? He asked, gesturing toward an empty office. Did you conquer the certification exam? Passed on the second try. She allowed herself a small smile. The first try taught me humility. Humility is overrated. He held the door for her. Confidence suits you better. They settled into chairs, and for a moment it was almost like college again. Study sessions that went too late, conversations that ranged from accounting principles to whether instant ramen counted as a food group. Before everything got complicated. Before she'd realized the Kim family was more than just wealthy. I'm glad you applied, Dae-hyun said, his tone shifting to something more serious. We need someone we can trust. Someone with your eye for detail. Trust is a strong word. I know, but I mean it. He held her gaze. The organization has been experiencing irregularities. Nothing I can prove yet, but my instincts tell me something's wrong. My father always said you saw patterns others missed. The mention of his father, dead 3 years now in circumstances officially labeled gang violence, cast a shadow across his features. Bambolina saw the grief he carried, the weight of being the eldest son in a family built on loyalty and blood. I'll do my best, she said quietly. I know you will. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. When she took it, His grip lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Warm, solid, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. As he led her to her new desk, Bambolina tried to ignore how right it felt to be near him again. Tried to ignore the small voice whispering that maybe she hadn't come back just for the job. 3 days into her new position, Bambolina found the first thread. It was small, a discrepancy in quarterly reports that didn't match the monthly statements. The kind of thing that could be a simple filing error, a misplaced decimal, an honest mistake in a system handling millions daily. But Bambolina had learned early, there's no such thing as a coincidental pattern. She pulled records going back 3 years. Spreadsheets filled her screen, numbers cascading in columns that told stories if you knew how to read them. And she did. Numbers didn't lie. Only the people entering them did. Hidden withdrawals. Small at first, then larger. Money moving through companies with legitimate-sounding names that disappeared into nothing when traced. Transfers timed to coincide with normal business expenses, camouflaged in the noise of daily operations. The pattern stretched back 37 months. 37 months. To the week Dae-hyun's father was killed. Bambolina's hands stilled over her keyboard. Her pulse thrummed loud in her ears. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic theft. Someone had been stealing for years, good enough to hide it from auditors and the entire financial oversight structure. Someone smart, someone with access, someone who knew the system intimately. She saved her work to an encrypted drive, paranoia learned from American crime shows, but paranoia that suddenly felt justified. Who? The question echoed in her mind. And what happened to anyone else who found out? That evening, she found Dae-hyun still at his desk, papers spread around him like pieces of a puzzle with too many missing edges. She closed the door behind her. "We need to talk." He looked up, and something in her expression made him set down his pen immediately. "What is it?" She placed printouts on his desk. "I found something. In the accounts." Dae-hyun scanned the numbers. With each line he read, his expression grew harder, more dangerous. By the time he finished, his hands had curled into fists. "How long?" His voice was quiet in a way that made her shiver. 3 years. Maybe longer. I'd need older records to be certain. But Dae-hyun. She hesitated. "It started right after your father died. Not months after. Days." The silence that followed pressed heavy against her eardrums. "My father was murdered," Dae-hyun said finally. "Outside his car after a late meeting. They said it was territorial. Rivals pushing back." He looked up at her, and his eyes held something sharp and calculating. But what if someone inside needed him gone? Someone who knew he was getting close to discovering this. Bambolina sat down slowly. "You think someone in the organization ended his life to cover up embezzlement?" "I think my father was many things, but careless wasn't one of them. He wouldn't have walked into an ambush unless he was meeting someone he trusted." Dae-hyun stood, paced to the window. "Who has access to these accounts?" "Senior management. Your father's inner circle." "People I trust." The words came out bitter. "People who've been family since I was a child." Bambolina joined him at the window. Outside, Seoul glittered in the evening light, beautiful and treacherous and full of secrets. "What do you want me to do?" He turned to her. "Keep digging, but carefully. If someone was willing to go that far." He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. "I'm not afraid." "You should be." His hand came up, almost touching her face before he stopped himself. The gesture hung in the air between them, tender and restrained. "I won't let anything happen to you. You understand? Not while I'm breathing." Respect, she realized. He saw her as capable, trusted her professional judgment, but he also valued her safety. Not because she was weak, but because she mattered. "We'll figure this out together," she said. "Together." He nodded slowly. Then, as if the moment had become too intense, he stepped back. "It's late. Let me drive you home." The next morning, Bambolina arrived to find Dae-hyun in conversation with an older man she recognized from company photos. Min-sik, the organization's second-in-command. The man who'd stood at the elder Kim's funeral and delivered a eulogy so moving that even hardened enforcers had wept. "I just want what's best for this family," Min-sik was saying as Bambolina approached. His voice carried warm authority, someone who'd earned his place through decades of loyalty. "Your father built something meaningful, Dae-hyun. We honor him by protecting it." "I know, Uncle." Dae-hyun's use of the title was natural, affectionate. "I'm trying." Min-sik noticed Bambolina and his expression brightened. "Ah, you must be the American accountant everyone's talking about." "Bambolina, yes?" He extended his hand and his grip was firm, respectful. "Welcome. We're fortunate to have someone with your credentials." "Thank you, sir." "Please, call me Min-sik. Or Uncle if you prefer." "Everyone does." His smile reached his eyes, crinkling them at the corners. "I understand you knew Dae-hyun in college. He spoke of you often back then." A knowing glint appeared. "Though he never mentioned how accomplished you were." Bambolina felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's kind." "He's his father's son." Min-sik's expression grew solemn. "Which means he carries heavy burdens. I hope you'll help lighten them where you can. This organization needs good people, honest people, now more than ever." Something about the emphasis on honest made Bambolina's instincts prickle, but Min-sik's face showed only genuine warmth. "I'll do my best," she said. "I'm sure you will." He turned back to Dae-hyun, clapping him on the shoulder with paternal affection. "Lunch tomorrow? There's a matter I'd like to discuss regarding the expansion plans." "Of course, Uncle. 1 o'clock?" "Perfect." Min-sik nodded to them both and walked away, his bearing dignified, his presence commanding respect from everyone he passed. "He seems nice," Bambolina said carefully. "He is." Dae-hyun watched Min-sik disappear around a corner. "He's been like a second father since I was 8 years old. Taught me to drive, came to my graduations, helped my mother through the funeral arrangements. If anyone in this organization is trustworthy, it's him." Bambolina nodded, but something nagged at her. Maybe it was the 3 years of embezzlement that had started immediately after the elder Kim's death. Maybe it was the way Min-sik's eyes had lingered on her just a moment too long, assessing. Or maybe she was seeing shadows where none existed. That evening, Bambolina stayed late reviewing more records. The office emptied around her until she was alone with the hum of computers and the weight of numbers that didn't add up. She pulled up the signatures on the suspicious transactions. Most required dual authorization, one from senior management, one from the financial controller. The controller's signatures varied over the years as people rotated through the position, but the senior management authorization was consistent. The same person, again and again, for 3 years. Min-sik. Bambolina's breath caught. She cross-referenced dates, double-checked authorization protocols, traced approval chains. Every suspicious transaction had Min-sik's signature somewhere in the chain. It didn't prove guilt. He signed hundreds of legitimate transactions too. But the pattern was undeniable. She was so focused on the screen that she didn't hear the elevator doors open down the hall, didn't notice footsteps approaching until a voice made her jump. "Working late?" She spun to find Min-sik standing in her doorway. His security badge dangled from his jacket. He had building access at all hours. His expression was pleasant, but his sudden presence felt deliberate. "Just catching up." She minimized the spreadsheet quickly and saw his eyes track the movement. "Dedication. I admire that." He stepped into her office and suddenly the space felt smaller. "But don't burn yourself out. This place will take everything you give and ask for more. Trust me, I've given it 20 years. "I'll keep that in mind." His gaze drifted to her computer screen, now showing only a generic desktop. Finding everything you need? Any questions about our systems? No, everything's clear. Good, that's very good. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes this time. You know, if you ever notice anything unusual, discrepancies, irregularities, anything that doesn't make sense, you should come to me directly. I've been overseeing finances since before you were born. There's nothing in these books I can't explain. The offer sounded helpful. The undertone felt like something else entirely. I appreciate that, Bombolina said carefully. Excellent. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Bombolina? Be careful working so late alone. Seoul is generally safe, but accidents happen, especially to people who aren't paying attention to their surroundings. He left. His footsteps echoed down the empty corridor. Bombolina sat frozen for a full minute before her hands started shaking. That wasn't paranoia. That was a warning, thinly veiled. She gathered her things quickly and left the building, looking over her shoulder the entire way home. Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. If this story is pulling you in, like this video and subscribe. The truth is about to get much darker. Dae-hyun couldn't sleep. He'd spent 3 nights turning Bambolina's findings over in his mind, trying to find alternative explanations that didn't lead where his instincts were pointing. Because if he was right, it meant everything he believed about loyalty and family was built on lies. At 3 in the morning, he gave up on sleep. He dressed, drove to the corporate building, and let himself into his father's old study, a room kept locked since the funeral, preserved like a shrine. Dust motes danced in the thin beam of his flashlight. His father's desk sat exactly as he'd left it. Papers stacked neatly, fountain pen in its holder, a framed photo of 10-year-old Dae-hyun and 6-year-old Dae-sung grinning gap-toothed at the camera. I should have done this years ago, he thought. Should have looked for answers instead of just grieving. He powered on his father's old laptop, an ancient model his father had kept for personal matters. The screen flickered to life. Dae-hyun navigated through files, searching for anything unusual. Banking records, correspondence, meeting notes. The mundane documentation of a life interrupted. And then, a folder titled Insurance. His finger hovered over the mouse. Some instinct told him that opening this file would change everything, that there would be a before and after, and he was about to cross that line. He clicked. Inside, one audio file, dated 2 days before his father's death. Dae-hyun pressed play with trembling hands. His father's voice filled the small room, raw, afraid in a way Dae-hyun had never heard. If you're listening to this, I'm dead. Dae-hyun's breath stopped. I hoped I was wrong. God, I hoped I was just being paranoid. But I know now. He betrayed me. The person I trusted most. The man I called brother for 20 years. No. 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 I have proof. Financial records, communications, evidence of systematic theft. But I can't move against him yet. He's too careful, too embedded in every part of this organization. His loyalists outnumber mine. If I act too soon, if I'm not absolutely certain, it could tear everything apart. A pause. His father's breathing was audible, ragged. I'm meeting him tomorrow night. Confronting him. Giving him a chance to confess, to return what he's taken, to leave quietly. I want to believe he'll choose honor. Another pause. Longer. But if you're hearing this, if I'm gone, it means he chose violence. Dae-hyun? Hearing his name made it devastatingly real. Find him. Find the truth. Protect your brother. But be smart. Be smarter than I was. Don't trust. Static. The recording cut off. Dae-hyun sat frozen, his father's terrified voice echoing in his skull. The person I trusted most. Someone close. Someone who'd been there through everything. His mind raced through names, faces, possibilities, and kept circling back to one person who fit every description. Who'd been his father's right hand for 20 years. Who'd mourned the loudest at the funeral. Who'd stepped seamlessly into the power vacuum. Minsik. Uncle Minsik, who'd taught him to drive, who'd attended Daesung's school performances, who'd been family in every way but blood. No, his heart protested. Not him. Anyone but him. But his mind was already assembling the pieces. Minsik had access to everything, had authorization on every suspicious transaction, had been in the perfect position to orchestrate his father's death. The laptop screen blurred as tears filled Dae-hyun's eyes. He wiped them away angrily. Crying wouldn't help. Crying wouldn't bring his father back or stop whatever Minsik was planning next. He copied the audio file to a secure drive, tucked it into his jacket, then sat in his father's chair and tried to figure out how to survive the next week. Dae-hyun spent the following day in a haze of normalcy that felt surreal. He attended meetings, reviewed contracts, made decisions about territory and trade routes, all while his mind worked on a deeper level, calculating risks and angles and chances of survival. The problem was simple. He had evidence, but no proof. An audio recording could be dismissed as paranoia or fabrication. The financial irregularities could be explained away by someone as skilled as Minsik. And if Dae-hyun moved too soon, if he accused Minsik without ironclad proof, he'd sign his own death warrant. But if he waited too long, Minsik might strike first. He was trapped between action and caution, and both paths led to blood. That evening, alone in his apartment with the city humming beyond his windows, Dae-hyun pulled out good paper, the kind his father used for important letters. "Dear Dae-sung," he began. His pen moved slowly, carving words that felt both necessary and terrible. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. I'm sorry. I know that's inadequate. The organization isn't what Father wanted it to be. There's corruption at the heart, and I think I've found it. But I haven't confirmed it yet. Haven't gathered enough proof to move safely. I'm meeting people tomorrow night. A deal that needs finalizing. But I have a bad feeling about it. The kind Father must have had before. If I'm wrong, I'll come home and burn this letter and we'll laugh about my paranoia. But if something happens, don't try to follow me into death. Don't let anger make you reckless. You're smarter than I ever was. Use that. Find the truth. I've hidden evidence in Father's old study, behind our photo on the desk. There's an audio file, financial records, everything you'll need. But be careful. The person responsible has power, has loyalists, has been part of this family for decades. I suspect Uncle Minsik. I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm right, he's too dangerous to confront directly. You'll need to be clever, strategic, make him defeat himself. And Dae-sung, take care of Bambalina. She deserves to be loved the way I never had the courage to love her. She deserves safety and honesty and someone who can give her a future without shadows. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her the thing I was going to say tomorrow was that I've loved her since college, that I kept silent because I thought I was protecting her. But really, I was just afraid. If you care for her, and I think you will, she's impossible not to care for. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait. Life is shorter than we think. I believe in you. I'm proud of you. Your brother, Dae-hyun. He folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in his desk drawer where Dae-sung would find it. If necessary. It won't be, he told himself firmly. Tomorrow I'll come home, and this letter will be an embarrassing artifact of anxiety. He tried to believe it. He almost did. The next evening, Dae-hyun picked Bambalina up at 7. "Where are we going?" she asked as she slid into his car. "Somewhere quiet. I need to talk to you." Her expression grew concerned. "Is this about the investigation?" Partly, but also personal. She didn't respond, but he felt her watching him. He took her to a small restaurant tucked into a quieter neighborhood. The kind of place that didn't cater to business dinners or power meetings. Just good food, soft lighting, and tables spaced far enough apart for private conversation. They ordered. Made small talk about her adjustment to Seoul, about his brother's graduate studies, about everything except what hung unspoken between them. Finally, over tea after the meal, Bambolina set down her cup. Okay, what's going on? You've been distracted all evening. Dae-hyun took a breath. I found something. In my father's office. An audio recording he made 2 days before he died. Bambolina leaned forward. What did it say? That he knew someone was stealing from the organization, that he was going to confront them. He met her eyes. And that he suspected Uncle Minsik. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. I don't have proof yet. Just the recording and the financial patterns you found. But it fits. He reached across the table, took her hand. Bambolina, I need you to promise me something. If anything happens to me... Stop. She squeezed his fingers hard. Don't talk like that. I have to. His voice was gentle but firm. There's a meeting tomorrow night. Big negotiation with Allied territory. Everyone will be there. All the senior members. If I'm right about Minsik, if he knows I'm getting close to the truth... He didn't finish. Then don't go. I have to. If I back out, it shows weakness. And if I'm wrong, if I let paranoia destroy what my father built, I'll never forgive myself. Bambolina's eyes filled with tears. So what? You just walk into what might be a trap and hope for the best? I hope for the best and prepare for the worst. He pulled out a small piece of paper with an address written on it. If I don't contact you by midnight tomorrow, go here. It's where I've hidden copies of everything. The audio file, the financial evidence, instructions for what to do next. Give it to Dae-sung. He'll know what to do. Dae-hyun. He stood, came around the table and pulled her to her feet. For a moment they stood facing each other, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. There's something I need to tell you, he said quietly. Something I should have said years ago. What is it? Her voice was barely a whisper. He took her face in his hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. I've loved you since college, since the day you fell asleep on my shoulder in the library. I've loved you through your graduation, through your leaving, through every day of the 7 months you were gone. I love you now. And if I survive tomorrow, if I come home safe, I'm going to tell you all of this properly. I'm going to do this right, with flowers and romance and everything you deserve. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're telling me now. I'm telling you now in case there is no tomorrow. But tomorrow... He smiled, trying to make it reassuring. Tomorrow, I'm going to come back. I'm going to take you somewhere beautiful. And I'm going to ask you properly if you'd consider giving someone like me a chance. Okay? Okay, she whispered. He wanted to kiss her. God, he wanted to. But kissing her now felt too much like goodbye. So instead he pulled her into a hug, holding her tight enough to memorize the feeling. Her arms came around him, clinging. Come back to me, she said into his shoulder. I promise I'll try. They stood like that for a long moment, 2 people on the edge of disaster, stealing one perfect moment before the fall. When they finally pulled apart, Dae-hyun walked her to his car, drove her home, watched until she was safely inside her building. Then he sent a text to his brother. If I don't come home tonight, read the letter in my desk. Take care of yourself. Take care of her. He drove toward the warehouse district, toward a meeting that would determine whether he lived to keep his promise. The warehouse squatted near the port, all concrete and shadows, surrounded by shipping containers that created a maze of steel. Dae-hyun arrived precisely on time. 2 of his own men flanked him, loyal, armed, alert. They'd scanned the building earlier, found nothing unusual. Standard layout for territory negotiations. But Dae-hyun's instincts screamed warnings his rational mind couldn't quite justify. Inside, temporary lighting had been strung overhead, harsh and industrial. A long table dominated the center space. On one side sat representatives from their allied organization, Park's People, rough men with the kind of scars you didn't get from accidents. On the other side sat the Kim family's senior management. And there, in the seat that should have been his father's, sat Min-sik. Dae-hyun. Min-sik's smile was warm, paternal, perfect. Good. We're all here. Let's begin. They settled into chairs. Park ran through terms, territory divisions, profit splits, mutual defense agreements. All standard, all expected. Dae-hyun participated, watching, listening, searching for the trap he felt but couldn't see. 30 minutes in, nothing seemed wrong. Maybe his paranoia was just paranoia. Maybe. The lights died. Darkness crashed over the warehouse like a physical weight. Shouts erupted. Chairs scraped against concrete. Somewhere glass shattered. Dae-hyun was already moving, muscle memory overriding thought. He reached for his phone, for light. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. Park's People were gone, their chairs empty. A setup. And standing in the center of the room, weapon drawn and steady, was Min-sik. Around him, the other senior members lay unconscious, slumped over the table, collapsed on the floor. Betrayal completed in seconds of darkness. Dae-hyun's bodyguards moved to protect him, but Min-sik was faster. 2 shots, precisely placed. Both men fell. "Uncle?" Dae-hyun's voice came out strangled, disbelieving even though he'd suspected. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 3 years ago." Min-sik's expression was almost sad. Almost. "Your father gave me a choice. I chose survival. Now you force me to make the same choice again. I don't have proof." "Don't lie, you're bad at it." Min-sik took a step closer. "You found the audio file. I can see it in your eyes. And that American girl, poking through financial records. You've been building a case." Dae-hyun's mind raced, calculating distances, exits, chances. There were none. Min-sik had positioned himself perfectly. "Why?" The question escaped before Dae-hyun could stop it. "Because I gave 20 years to this family and stayed in your father's shadow. Because I built half of what we have and got none of the recognition. Because power matters more than loyalty." Min-sik shrugged. "Your father was a good man. That was his fatal flaw. And me? You're too much like him. Too trusting, too honorable, too likely to eventually discover everything." Min-sik raised his weapon. "It's nothing personal, son. You're just in the way." Dae-hyun saw the finger tighten on the trigger. He threw himself sideways. The shot fired. The bullet meant for his heart caught his side instead, tearing through flesh. Pain exploded white-hot and devastating. He hit the ground hard, rolled, pushed himself up on legs that barely worked, ran. Behind him, Min-sik shouted orders. Footsteps thundered. More shots rang out. Dae-hyun crashed through a side door into an alley slick with recent rain. Cold air hit his face, shockingly alive. His side burned. Each breath felt like swallowing glass. But he ran anyway. Because stopping meant dying, and he'd promised Bambolina he'd try to come home. The rain started as mist, then became a downpour. Dae-hyun stumbled through twisting alleys, one hand pressed against his side where blood pulsed hot between his fingers. Behind him, voices called out. Min-sik's men, hunting, closing the distance. He needed help. Needed to warn Dae-sung. Needed to get the evidence to someone who could use it. His phone. He pulled it from his pocket with hands that shook violently. The screen was cracked but still lit up. He dialed Bambolina as he rounded another corner. putting a building between himself and pursuit. Dae-hyun? Her voice was bright, unsuspecting. Are you done? Should I wait up? Bamba! His voice cracked. Minsik, my father, he shot. What? Dae-hyun, where are you? The evidence. Tell Dae-sung. In my father's study, behind the... A wave of dizziness hit him. The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the wet pavement. He tried to pick it up. His legs wouldn't cooperate. They buckled, sending him to his knees. Get up! He commanded himself. Get up! Move! You promised! But his body had decided it was done obeying commands. He managed to lean against a wall, leaving a bloody handprint on rain-slick brick. Rain poured down his face. Through the downpour, he saw a figure running toward him. Bambolina. She must have run from her apartment the moment the call dropped. No, he thought desperately. You shouldn't be here. Not safe. But she didn't run away. She reached him in seconds, her knees hitting the pavement as she pulled him into her lap. Her hands pressed against his wound. Everything that happened next unfolded exactly as it had in the beginning, her voice breaking, his hand on her cheek, his final words. And darkness. 20 meters back, Dae-sung stood frozen. His brother's text had sent him here, following, watching, arriving too late. Now he watched Bambolina hold his brother's body and scream. Watched her rock back and forth, begging him to wake up. Dae-sung's hands clenched into fists, his jaw locked. His breathing came shallow and controlled. Something was crystallizing inside him, something hard and cold and purposeful. I'll finish this, he whispered through clenched teeth. I promise, brother. I'll finish this. Sirens wailed in the distance. Dae-sung turned, walked away into darkness and rain. A gentle soul had died tonight. What walked away would make sure that death had meaning. The funeral was held on a gray morning. Dae-sung stood at the front of the traditional mourning hall in clothes that felt like a costume. Black suit, white flower, expression carved from stone. People came through in waves. Family members, business associates, people whose connection to his brother he'd never understand. They offered condolences. He accepted them with perfect grace. Inside, he felt nothing. Or everything. Or something so overwhelming it had wrapped around and become numbness. Bambolina stood at the back, barely holding together. Their eyes met once across the room, and in that moment they shared something wordless. Grief. Understanding. A bond forged in blood and rain. After the ceremony, after the last mourner left, Dae-sung returned to his apartment. He sat at his desk, pulled out the letter he'd found exactly where his brother said it would be. Read it for the 5th time. Don't try to follow me into death. Don't let anger make you reckless. Dae-sung spread the evidence across his floor, the audio file his brother had hidden, the financial records Bambolina had copied, witness statements from people who'd been at the warehouse. Minsik had been careful, had built alibis, surrounded himself with loyalists, created a structure where he seemed above suspicion. But careful wasn't perfect. Dae-sung had always been good at finding flaws, at seeing patterns others missed, at playing several moves ahead. You're smarter than I ever was. Use that. Okay, brother, he whispered. I'll use it. He picked up his phone, started making calls, not to enforcers or muscle, to accountants, lawyers, journalists, rival organizations, the kind of people who dealt in information and leverage. I have a story for you, he said into each call, about embezzlement and death in the Kim organization. About a man who betrayed his best friend and took over an empire. I can give you proof, documentation, everything you need. One by one, he planted seeds. His father had built an organization through reputation and respect. His brother had tried to be honorable in a dishonorable world. Now Dae-sung would teach Min-sik what happened when you underestimated the quiet one. The next 3 months passed in careful orchestration. Dae-sung became a ghost, present but invisible, grieving but functional, harmless to anyone watching. He returned to graduate school, attended classes on international business ethics, wrote papers about corporate governance, and behind the scenes, he waged war. He leaked financial evidence to rival organizations, small discrepancies at first, then larger ones, always carefully timed, always with just enough proof to breed doubt, but not enough to trigger open conflict. He fed information to Min-sik's own lieutenants, rumors about who was stealing from whose territory, whispers about who was secretly negotiating with competitors. He watched as paranoia took root, as trusted allies began questioning each other. He sent anonymous tips to law enforcement about shipments and meetings. Never enough to trigger real investigation that might rally everyone together. Just enough to make everyone nervous. The Kim organization began to fracture under the weight of mutual suspicion. Min-sik sat at the center, growing increasingly isolated, not yet understanding he was being systematically dismantled. Dae-sung also watched over Bambolina, from a distance. He made sure she got home safely each night, made sure no one from the organization approached her, made sure she remained untouched by the chaos. "Take care of Bambolina," his brother had asked. So he did. One evening, he found her sitting on a bench near Dae-hyun's grave. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. The sun was setting in shades of purple and gold. He sat down beside her without speaking. "I come here when I need to think," Bambolina said after a while. "Does it help?" "Sometimes." She glanced at him, really looking at him for the first time in weeks. "Dae-sung, are you okay? You look different." "I'm managing." That's not an answer. He almost smiled. "It's the only one I have." They sat in silence, watching darkness creep across the sky. "He loved you," Dae-sung said finally. "In case you needed to hear it said clearly, he loved you for years. Since college. He told me in his letter that watching you fall asleep in the library was when he knew." Bambolina's breath hitched. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I loved him too. I should have told him." "Why didn't I tell him?" "Because we think we have time." Dae-sung's voice was gentle. "We all think we have time." Vulnerability, he realized. This moment of shared grief, it was its own kind of strength. "Dae-sung," Bambolina said, wiping her eyes, "whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, is it worth it? Is revenge worth losing yourself?" He considered the question seriously. "I'm not losing myself. I'm becoming what I need to be to finish this, to make sure what happened to my father and brother never happens to anyone else. That's what worries me." "Maybe we take care of each other," he said softly, like he asked. She took his hand, squeezed it. Reciprocity. Equal partnership. "I'd like that," she said. They sat together until the stars emerged. Two survivors learning to carry grief without being crushed by it. 3 months after Dae-hyun's death, Dae-sung's carefully constructed plan finally culminated. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, a devastating exposé published simultaneously across 3 major outlets. The Kim organization's embezzlement scandal, complete with documentation, audio recordings, witness testimony, and a clear trail leading to Min-sik. The article was masterful, damning without sensationalism, factual without mercy. It painted a picture of a man who'd betrayed his best friend and taken power through deception. Public opinion turned instantly, legitimate business partners severed ties, rival organizations circled closer. Most devastating, Min-sik's own people turned on him. The lieutenants he'd once commanded now saw him as a liability, someone who'd brought shame and attention they couldn't afford. Dae-sung received the call he'd been waiting for late that evening. He's holed up in the old office building, his source said. Everyone's abandoned him. He's asking for you. Tell him I'll be there in an hour. He hung up, called Bambolina. It's almost over. I'm going to see Minsik tonight. I'm coming with you. No. Yes. Her voice was firm. You don't get to take that choice away from me. Choice. The fourth love check. Respecting her agency. Okay, he said finally, but you stay behind me. Deal. The Kim family building was a shell of its former power. They rode the elevator in silence. Dae-sung's hand brushed Bambolina's, and she took it. Squeezed once. When the doors opened, they found Minsik sitting behind his desk, the city spread out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. Minsik looked smaller somehow, diminished, still dangerous, but no longer the towering figure who'd commanded an organization. So, Minsik's voice carried weary amusement. The quiet one. You did all this? I did what you taught me. Dae-sung stepped into the room. That power isn't about force. It's about understanding what people fear. Very clever. Your brother would have just tried to fight me. Minsik poured himself whiskey. His hands shook slightly. You're more dangerous. What now? Bambolina spoke, her voice steady. You've destroyed everything. What more do you want? The truth. She stepped forward. About Dae-hyun, about his father. I want you to say it out loud. Minsik looked at her with something almost like respect. You really loved him. Yes. He was foolish for not claiming you when he had the chance. Minsik finished his drink. Fine. You want the truth? I betrayed his father. I took what was his because I could. Then I eliminated Dae-hyun because he was too much like his father. Too good. Too likely to uncover everything. I have no regrets. In this world, the ruthless survive. You survived, Dae-sung said quietly. Past tense. Minsik frowned. What? Your own people are coming for you. Tonight. Soon. I made sure they know exactly where you are. They've decided you're a liability. Dae-sung's voice was calm, empty of emotion. I'm not taking your life. They are. Your own organization. Real fear flickered across Minsik's face. You're bluffing. Listen. In the silence, they heard it. Below them, car doors slamming, footsteps echoing, voices coordinating. Dae-sung walked to the door. We're leaving now, and you face exactly what you deserve. Accountability from the world you built. Wait. Minsik stood, his composure finally shattering. You can't just leave me? You built a world where strength and betrayal are rewarded. Now you live and die by those same rules. Dae-sung took Bambolina's hand and led her toward the elevator. Behind them, Minsik's shouts grew desperate, then fell silent as other voices filled the floor. In the descending silence, Bambolina looked at Dae-sung. Can you live with this? I have to, he said quietly, because the alternative was letting him walk away. And I couldn't do that. Not after what he took from us. They exited through a side entrance. As they walked away into the Seoul night, neither looked back. Justice, they'd learned, didn't always come with clean hands, but it came nonetheless. 6 months after Minsik's death, spring returned to Seoul. Bambolina stood in her new apartment, smaller but cleaner somehow. She'd left the Kim organization, taken a position at a legitimate nonprofit firm. Lower pay, but every number she audited was honest. She was learning to sleep without nightmares. Learning to remember Dae-hyun with love instead of just grief. A knock at her door. Dae-sung stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. Hey, he said. Hey, yourself. She stepped aside. Come in. I just made tea. They settled on her small couch, cups warming their hands. Outside, cherry blossoms drifted past the window. How are you? She asked. Better. I started seeing a therapist. He smiled slightly. Turns out orchestrating someone's downfall leaves scars. Who knew? She laughed, surprised at how good it felt. I changed my graduate focus, studying financial ethics now, helping companies prevent the kind of corruption that... He didn't finish. That sounds perfect for you. I think it is. He set down his tea, turned to face her. Bambolina, I've been thinking about what comes next. For both of us. Okay. My brother asked me to take care of you, but I realize now that isn't about protecting you from everything. It's about being there when you need me and stepping back when you don't. It's about respecting your choices. Dae-sung, I'm not done. He took a breath. These past months, watching you rebuild your life, seeing your courage, I've realized something. I care about you. Deeply. Not just because Dae-hyun asked me to, but because you're you. Strong and smart and kind and inspirational in ways you don't even realize. He paused. I think I'm falling in love with you, he continued quietly. I know that's complicated. I know you loved my brother. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know how I feel. No expectations. Commitment. The final check. Offering his heart without demanding hers. Bambolina felt tears prick her eyes. Gentle tears, healing tears. Dae-sung, I think I'm falling in love with you too. His eyes widened. Really? Really? She took his hand. It took time to understand what I was feeling, to realize that loving you doesn't mean I'm betraying Dae-hyun's memory. But I think he'd want this. Would want us to be happy. He said as much. In his letter. Dae-sung's voice was thick with emotion. He said you deserve to be loved properly, that I shouldn't make his mistake of waiting. Then let's not wait. She squeezed his hand. But let's go slow. Let's build something real and honest. Slow sounds perfect. He pulled her into his arms, and she melted into the embrace. Safe, seen, chosen. They held each other while cherry blossoms drifted past and the city hummed with life. Two people learning that happy endings aren't about forgetting pain. They're about choosing joy despite it. 1 year later, the chapel was small, intimate, perfect. Bambolina wore a simple white dress with delicate embroidery. Dae-sung wore a charcoal gray suit with a white flower in the lapel. They'd invited only close friends. People who understood that this wasn't just a wedding, but a reclamation of hope. On a table near the altar sat a framed photograph. Dae-hyun, in his graduation robes, smiling that gentle smile. A way of including him. Of acknowledging that their love had roots in loss, but had grown into something entirely its own. I promise to stand beside you, Dae-sung said, his voice steady. To respect your strength, to support your dreams, to build a life based on honesty and choice and partnership. I promise to stay connected to the gentle person I was, and I promise that every day I'll choose you. Forever. Bambolina's vows came from her heart. I promise to be your partner in joy and in sorrow. I promise to help you remember kindness when the world feels cold. I promise to build a future that honors the past but isn't defined by it. And I promise that I choose this, choose us, with complete freedom. You are my choice. They kissed while their friends applauded, and somehow, Dae-hyun smiled. The reception was held in a restaurant garden strung with lights. Dae-sung's former professor approached them, an older woman with kind eyes. You know, she said, I heard about what you both survived. And the way you've rebuilt your lives, the way you've chosen healing over bitterness, romance over cynicism, it's truly inspirational. You're proof that love can grow even in the darkest circumstances. Bambolina leaned into Dae-sung's side. We had good examples. And we had each other. That's the secret. We don't heal alone. We heal together. Later, as they prepared to leave for a modest honeymoon in Jeju Island, Dae-sung paused. "What is it?" Bambolina asked. "Just taking a moment, remembering." He looked at her with wonder. "A year ago, I thought I'd spend my life as a shell, but you reminded me what it means to be whole, what it means to love and be loved. You saved me. We saved each other." She took both his hands. "Ready?" "Ready." They stepped out into the Seoul evening together, the city glowing with light and life and possibility. Somewhere in the distance came the sound of children laughing, the sound of future, of innocence, of continuity. They'd been through hell. They'd lost people they loved. They'd made choices that would mark them forever. But they'd also found each other, found healing, found a love that was honest and earned and real. A love that chose happiness without forgetting pain. That honored the dead by living fully. That proved the most powerful act of defiance against darkness is simply refusing to let it win. Thank you for staying with this story, for sitting with the pain and the healing, for believing in the possibility of second chances. If this story touched your heart, like this video and subscribe. There are more stories of love and resilience waiting to be told. Stories about people who choose hope, even when life gives them every reason not to. And maybe, just maybe, these stories can be motivational for your own journey. A reminder that endings can also be beginnings, and that the most powerful form of love is the kind that chooses to keep growing even after loss. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, you deserve a love story that honors your strength.